All right, this last lecture, I can't demonstrate anything. Good thing, because MySQL is not working on my desktop anyways. These are the types of commands that we just want to put in the back of your head so that you know they exist. There's extra credit on the homework assignment for them. It's not something that you'll likely need to use unless you have some kind of a database someplace with multiple users. I mean, right now we have multiple users going against our Lions Camp database. I could apply these on my website, but we can apply these commands to our single user portable apps version of MySQL. So I can't demonstrate them. I could type them on the MySQL workbench, but that won't help any. So we're just going to talk about them. And then you can experiment with them, or at least try to figure out how to use them in the homework assignment. And if you need help, talk to Matt, because he's already done them and got them all right, if I remember right. So he figured it out. If Matt can do it. No, Matt did it. He did well. He read it to himself. So now he's going to hear the lecture and go, yeah, I knew all that. In database security, what we're doing is granting and revoking, mostly granting, rights to do things in our database. As we saw when we were talking about indexes, or not indexes, excuse me, views, there are many users who we don't want to have full access to the entire database. There are many users that we want to restrict their access to certain fields in a table. Using views and using the grant command and the revoke command potentially, we can restrict what users can access in a database on a user-by-user basis. Or as we'll see, we can also modify or restrict that on a grand scale, meaning everybody has these rights, or everybody has these rights removed. So there's a grant command. We'll see some examples coming up here in a little bit. When we grant or revoke, we grant or revoke privileges. These are the most common privileges that you're going to see. The ability to see data. Most of the time when it comes to select, it's grant the ability to select and see data in this table. Because we might revoke the privilege for the entire database except for this one table. And grant commands, like many other SQL commands, you might issue them in series. You need to revoke all these rights and then put this one back again and this one back again. Often create a series of these things. So the select command allows us to grant rights to certain tables so that we can just look around. It also allows us to specify specific fields, and we'll see that in a little bit. Say I want them to be able to look at the employees table, but only certain fields. There's a privilege for inserting new records, which can all, I don't think that one can be restricted to certain fields. I think you either have insert rights or you don't. There's an update command, and that one is definitely a field by field, or can be a field by field privilege. Deleting records, creating tables, and create, by the way, is not just for tables. Create views, create indexes. We can remove the rights for somebody to create an index on a table. For most database administrators, that's a given. Nobody has the right to create indexes except the database administrator, because there's ramifications to creating those indexes. And the same thing with views. Drop views, indexes, tables. We can grant the right to grant rights to somebody else. So I can say, well, you're the campus dean in Stevens Point, so you have the ability to grant to your instructors rights to tables that you have access to. I cannot grant rights to tables I do not have access to. I cannot provide privileges that I don't own myself. So if I can only see the students who are enrolled in Stevens Point campuses as the campus dean, I can grant rights to you to do the same thing, or grant rights to any subset of that. Forget what reference this is about. Indexes we talked about, it's a privilege. We can grant the permission to create indexes and to alter table structure. I would guess that many of these, the ones that aren't data related, they're structure related, create tables, create or update tables, alter tables, those are pretty limited. But you can see there's a lot of power here. There's a lot of flexibility to give people the ability to do things. And what I remember when I was in the Air Force, that's how long a lot of this stuff's been around here. What I remember in the Air Force is forms. We're hiring a new employee. They need these rights to the database because that's the work that they're going to be doing. And then there were other forms saying, I don't have this right. I can't get my job done without this right. Please grant me that right. But there was always a form that went to the database administrator who generally issues these commands. So you need to know that they're there, and it wouldn't hurt to know how to execute them, though in most cases this should be above your pay grade, at least for a while. The commands themselves are pretty straightforward. You grant privileges. Privileges can be any of these that are up here. I don't know if that's an all-inclusive list or if it's just the ones I understood when I went to the MySQL site. By the way, your book seems to be a little out of date when it comes to these things. It doesn't agree with the MySQL documentation. But you can't try any of these for real anyway, so it doesn't matter if you're trying the ones in the book or the ones that are here. But I think I was getting red squiggles under errors when I tried to follow the book. And when I went to the website, saw some differences. So I don't know if this is a complete list of privileges. My guess is no, there might be others. These are the ones I'm most likely to run into. You can grant as many privileges in one grant command as you wish. So I can grant select, insert, and update, basically CRUD, right? On a given table. This is not on a database. Database access is a different picture. It's beyond this lecture. But if I want to grant privileges on a given table, I can grant that to multiple usernames. And this is one of the reasons that we have trouble demonstrating this, because in the portable version, even though we can create multiple users, those are just multiple connections, not multiple users to the database at the same time. So we can't demonstrate this, but so the usernames in all my examples, the usernames in the homework are made up. But this is some kind of database username. And when you grant privileges, you can grant those privileges to multiple people at the same time. You just use a comma separated list. So here it might be select, comma, insert, comma, update, comma, delete on TBL employees to Matt and Karen and Paul, or whatever the usernames are. These usernames we're talking about are probably usernames within the database, not a mid-state login username, but one that's specifically assigned to the database, though I would guess for many companies those correlate. You can only specify one table name, so if I need to provide this access to 10 table names, that's going to be a bit of a problem. But not really. In most SQL commands, you can write for loops. You could have an array of table names, or you could create a query that says, give me the table names. Remember our select tables command? Shows you a list of tables. You could take the answer from one query, use it as the indexes to the for loop, and then maybe stick this grant command inside a for loop to provide access to lots of tables. Conceivably. But one grant command can only be applied to one table. This does not say table names, but we can grant lots of privileges to lots of users. Username can also be public. It's a keyword. Basically means everybody. The question I have and can't demonstrate or can't practice is, what if I give Paul select access to a database, and then weeks later I decide everybody needs select access, so I do a grant public select access, which includes Paul again. If I then revoke that from public, does that revoke Paul's original one? My guess is yes, but I have no way of testing that. So then if I wanted to have Paul as an administrator or a assistant administrator be able to do those commands, I'd have to reissue that command if I did a revoke from public. So public's a keyword that talks about everybody. There's also a keyword called all that grants all privileges to whoever. So conceivably, you could say grant all on this table to public and let anybody and everybody do anything and everything to that table. Would guess that doesn't happen a lot. A couple of database administrators, maybe a few assistants in case the data administrator is out. But that sounds like it would be pretty dangerous. There is one little side note here is that you cannot grant privileges. Remember, there's a privilege to allow other people to grant privileges. Can't do that with an all. So here's some other examples. Oh, these are specific ones. I don't have too many examples in here, but here's grant select on a certain field. Remember, select allows me to create select queries with all their joins and all that stuff, assuming you have rights to all the tables. You can do full queries. This table name is a misnomer. That could be a view name. I think it says that a little later. Wherever I say table name, consider it possible to stick a view name in there instead. And remember from last time that views can be combined tables that are already joined into one virtual table. They could be partial tables. They could be all kinds of stuff. If you don't specify a field list when you're granting select or update access, then they have access to all the fields in that table. If you wish to restrict the field so they can't see the Social Security numbers, they can't see the salary because they don't need that information, then you must provide the list of fields that you do want them to have access to. I have not found a command that says give them access to all the fields except this one and this one. But for most tables, the field list is relatively short. Same thing for update. This field list is attached to the select and the update. In your book, the field list is attached to the table name. That kept giving me syntax errors. MySQL will syntax check this stuff, but it won't be able to run it to do anything. If you don't specify any fields, which is typical, then you get the entire table. Questions? Okay. In addition to having a privilege of grant, we can do grant. What's more often done, though, is to do a grant with grant. So we grant select privileges or we grant insert update privileges with grant. But again, I cannot grant you privileges that I haven't already been given. So if I am not allowed to delete tables, records, I cannot grant you the right to do so. And that makes sense. The other thing that's interesting with grant is if I revoke, let's say I have permissions to delete tables, and I grant that permission to Matt as well to help me delete. If my permissions are revoked, any grants that I have given are also automatically revoked. So that's one of the differences between using with grant versus grant as a privilege. Anything that I have granted gets pulled back. If you want to restrict record access, now you're talking about combining with views. If I only want you or Lyle to have access to the people who are in this class, and I have a registrations table that has every registration at Midstate, at least on the Stevens Point campus, or maybe I have access to all registrations, I can create a view called Stevens Point RDD that selects all from the registrations where it's the Stevens Point campus in the RDD class, and save that as a view. I can then give Lyle access to that view, and he can see just those registrations instead of all registrations. So views, excuse me, and these grant accesses go together very, very well. Because the only way I can restrict the records you can see are by creating a view and then giving you access to the view. So here I've created a view of all the publishers that are in New York. And then I can grant access to that view to Thompson. He can select records, he can update records, he can delete records, which is interesting, but he can't update them. I'm sorry, he can't insert new ones. It's not his job. What this basically says is when we get a new publisher in New York, there's somebody else at a higher level who's going to insert them into the master table that this view is based on, because this view is based on publishers, right? Somebody else is going to insert the new publisher into the publishers table, and the next time that Thompson accesses that view, that publisher will be there. Because remember, the views are constantly updating, constantly showing new data. Whatever the publishers table has, the views table allows you to view. I think it's interesting that, this is just my example, but interesting that I can delete records from that, but I can't insert them. Probably a little strange. You see the relationship between views and granting access. Okay, close enough. I'll take that as a yes. Finally, we can revoke privileges. It's basically the same command. Which privileges, which table, which users. Yes, you can use public and you can use all. There is no revoke with grant. When I revoke the privileges you have, the grant stuff all goes away. So revoke is just the opposite. Take these privileges away from this person. This is another thing that many database administrators need to do when people leave the company, so that when Tom Cruise tries to break in and steal your corporate secrets out of the database, he has no rights anymore to do that, unless he, of course, steals your eyeball and uses that to sign into the system. But anyways, mission impossible, right? But it's another very important part of database administration is granting rights, removing rights to make sure that people only see the data they need to see. That helps with security of that data. But it does add a level of management that database administrator's got to worry about. It's not just building the tables and how are they linked together and what do the data dictionaries look like maybe. But once the database is up and running, who gets to use it? Another way to do this that we've done in the Lions Camp program is to not put the users at the database level, but put the users at the GUI level. Background music to my recording. I wonder if it's going to make it. In the Lions Camp program, you sign into the program, and once you sign into the program, then the program determines which parts of the database you get to see based on how you signed in. The privileges are in there. That assumes that the person can't get to the database directly. And on a web database, that's often the case. You need a special password on my website to get into the databases. First, you have to be an administrator on the website, saying I'm a web administrator. You have to sign in there. And then there's a separate password to get to the databases. But the programs can be given that that password. And so a lot of these privileges, if you will, are allowed via GUI instead of the database. Whether that's easy or not, easier to manage or not, I don't know. We still have to manage it within the database. We have different users with different titles. I don't know, Paul will have to add that to the list to make sure we show that somehow, but we don't have a lot of that implemented yet. Where if you're an administrative assistant, you get to see this information, but you get to see personal information like addresses and stuff, but not any medical information. If you're a nurse, maybe you get to see all the medical information and certain amounts of private information, but not all of it. And then, of course, there's the administrator of the program who gets to see everything and anything. So not all of this is necessarily done inside the database. Some of it can be done using a GUI that sits on top of the database. If you need to, for some reason, you can show privileges and you can show grants for a particular user or for everybody. Those commands exist just to let you see what does this person have. That can get pretty, that report, I've seen a couple of them, can get pretty complicated, especially if you have hundreds of users with different kinds of rights. And particularly if you write scripts, then a new person comes along, they are assigned as an instructor. Instructors have certain rights in the database because they need them. And so every time an instructor is hired, you run a script. And the script could create all kinds of privileges in 20 different commands. And when you ask for them, get ready, because here they come. But this is something that did happen to me when I changed positions. As an instructor, I had certain rights in PeopleSoft. I can see all the grades for anybody who's ever been in my class, but I cannot see grades assigned to other people's classes. I can see certain amounts of your personal information, but there are other parts of your information that I as an instructor cannot see. Now, as a campus dean, I don't know about that personal information. I haven't tested that. I haven't had time to play around with how much can I snoop on you. But I do know that I can see now classes, grades, transcripts for other people who aren't assigned to me anymore. So it happens everywhere. Questions about security? Okay. Class is over. You know everything that I'm going to teach you. You know everything I know about MySQL. That should be enough to make you dangerous in the real world. To recognize and read other people's queries. I wish we had some of the interns here from, well, maybe we'll get Karen to report back to you. You been passing the word? Maybe should I keep my mouth shut?
Awesome.
Some people know. So now we'll tell the whole world, we'll put it in a recording, that Karen's got an internship at Skyward for this summer already. That's awesome. Yay! So when she comes back, she'll have lots of, she'll be a real pest to the instructor because they always are. Well, Skyward does it this way. But she'll have lots of information about how, and Paul's here so he knows about those pests. You've heard a few of them, yep. But no, that's a lot of cool insight that she will have to share with you about what the real world is like and how hard it will be for her to learn these things when there are 10,000 tables and you don't even know what they mean and how do you relate to them. It's part of what she gets to do this summer. So pick her brain when she comes back, and if I were the new AITP president, I'd want her to come in and do a presentation or something. That's just me. Idea. Hey. But, okay, end of class. What are the other details we need here? I think this assignment, the views, indexes, and security assignment is due on the 13th, right? At drop dead midnight. Unless you want a shot at an update, then you better get it to me by a reasonable hour on Sunday so that I can grade it Sunday. After Sunday, I have no promises that I'm going to be able to grade stuff on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, get it back to you in time for updates. Can't promise that. I'll try. But I'm not making those promises. If you get it to me by a reasonable hour on Sunday, what's reasonable? 6 p.m.? Pardon me? Get it to me by Sunday at 6 p.m. I'll try to get it graded before 11 p.m. that night, send it back to you so that you can do updates and turn them in by Wednesday. All updates for the other assignments are due on the 13th. If you're behind an assignment, got an NQA card into me. A couple of you are in that boat. Got an NQA card into me. If you get it to me by Sunday, you'll have a shot at an update. Otherwise, it's like any other assignment. I promise no further updates after Sunday. Anything you turn in on Monday is final. I'm not offering an update. If you turn it in Monday, I'm probably at best going to grade it Monday night. That's your best shot. Questions? Okay, rest of the class period today, just a little, no, it's an hour. This today and Tuesday is lab for you to work on your stuff. Anybody on Blackboard? Quick access to Blackboard? We'll check to see if your survey is out there. I have requested surveys for all of my classes. So it is?
Yeah.
Cool. Please take the survey. If you wish to make evil comments about me, feel free. But what I'm more interested in is what would you like, what did you like, didn't you like about the class? How could it be improved? What worked well? So that I can share that information with the next instructor. My advice is if you like recordings, mention it. All right, so that I can say, look, I got all these evaluations, recording. Guess what? They like them. You maybe should do that, new person.
Update points.
Update points. There you go. Imagine, it's really good. That's a good thing. It's not just recordings. Anything that really works for you in class, you're really talking to the next instructor of this class. And probably the instructor of your web programming class and your web data management class, etc. Your iOS or mobile class as well, telling them what works. And if you tell them instead of me, then it might definitely have some more weight. So please do the evaluations for all the classes. And that goes for your other classes as well. They do get read. It's not gets buried someplace. Hopefully the other instructors are doing what I do. When we get those, we look at them, analyze them. We don't take every one of your suggestions, but we do consider them. And a lot of what these classes are today because of suggestions students have made in the past. On that note, literally, end recording.